That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Okay, boys, this is it. I'm waving the flag. I surrender. We're throwing in the towel. We're having to move Kyle Pitts up in Dynasty. Now, this is something we briefly talked about earlier, where when you officially had Julio Jones coming out himself and saying on that phone call that he wanted out of Atlanta, we were sitting there, we're going, okay, maybe this isn't a Russell Wilson situation. Maybe this is actually going to happen. So we went over there on Patreon. We updated our Dynasty rankings. We slightly moved Kyle Pitts up. Well, now we officially have Julio Jones in Tennessee. And if you dive into how the targets are most likely going to break down for Atlanta this upcoming season, if you understand historically what happens with these players that have this much hype in Dynasty with their value once they hit, we have to move Kyle Pitts up. Now, of course, later on in the video, we are going to be talking about exactly where we moved him in our Patreon rookie rankings yesterday. But first, I want to really dive into everything. And also, y'all know we got to come out here. We got to beg for those likes. If y'all can get this video over 300 likes in the first 12 hours, that would be absolutely massive. And that definitely helps this channel continue to grow. And also, a massive, massive update. Okay, so we got more people telling me that they were going to go to the Flock Meetup than I initially thought. So we are changing the location of the Flock Meetup. Please, please, please do not be going to the old location. We are going to be having the Flock Meetup at Zilker Park. Maybe I'll create some kind of sign. Maybe I will do something so y'all can come through and find us. But it's a giant open field if you've never been to Zilker Park before. I am sure that you're going to be able to find us. I'll wear some kind of sports jersey. I'll bring a 100-pound big-ass white dog. That way you can definitely find me. And I'll keep everything posted on Discord, Patreon, Twitter, Instagram, so it'll be easy to find us. But yeah, we are moving to Zilker. That way as many people, and preferably a ton of people, come out to that Flock Meetup. I'll bring some drinks if people are interested in that. But yeah, that should be it. Let's dive into this video. Let's talk about Kyle Pitts. And I don't even want to do this, but I will do this just in case we have any new listeners of the channel. Let's just briefly talk about why Kyle Pitts is the best tight end prospect of all time. And this is something we have said this entire offseason. I mean, at the very beginning of the offseason, I'll get some screenshots up here, but we were talking about why Kyle Pitts was the best tight end prospect of all time and still overvalued in Dynasty based on historical tight end hit rates. So we've been on board saying Kyle Pitts is a generational type prospect. We've just been saying that it's so hard to evaluate the tight end position in these tight end prospects coming into the NFL. I mean, we obviously presented that in-depth research over there in our rookie draft guide that so many of y'all have read by now. So I'm sure that we are all on the same page in understanding how hard it is to try to correlate actual prospect grades at the tight end position to fantasy success at the next level. So that's why we were saying that Kyle Pitts was overvalued in Dynasty. We are looking at the Atlanta Falcons offense going, you know what? I mean, they do have two players soaking up targets that it's going to be very hard to see Kyle Pitts coming in and automatically jumping up into that elite tight end category his rookie season based on those historical hit rates. So I would rather just pay the same price with what he's going in rookie drafts 12 months from now and use that allocation of resources into a position where we think that the value is actually going to accrue by drafting Najee Harris, by drafting Travis Etienne, and then we can trade for Kyle Pitts, possibly plus another piece next offseason. Well, I am sitting here thinking that that is no longer going to be likely. And let's just dive into the prospect that he is. So Kyle Pitts, 20 years old going into the NFL draft. I mean, you love to see that regardless of what position it is. I mean, there's a correlation to these players coming in and getting drafted in the first round at a younger age and having a higher success rate and a higher overall ceiling at the NFL level. Now, this is because if you're already talented enough to get drafted in that range at 20 years old compared to someone who's 22, 23, we know that you have a few more years of development. I mean, nobody's going to be surprised if Kyle Pitts comes on and he actually just continues to develop his craft. That's expected. He's a 20-year-old prospect. I mean, he is 2 years younger than I am. Honestly, almost 3 years younger than I am. That is absolutely ridiculous considering the fact that he's 6'6", 245 pounds, has about the longest wingspan in the entire NFL. He goes higher in the NFL draft than we've ever seen a tight end before. He ran a 4.44 40-yard dash, which puts him in the 99th percentile. I mean, literally a freakish man from size, from speed. Everybody knows this by now. Everybody knows how good of a prospect he is. But what I really want to look at is I want to look at what the expectations are for Kyle Pitts in 2021. Now, y'all know I have been laughing at him with where his ADP was in redraft leagues in particular. In Dynasty, yeah, sure, if you wanted to go in with Kyle Pitts once we got the Julio Jones rumors, I wasn't necessarily going to go all in on you, ripping you up, but those redraft ADPs were horrendous. He was going ahead of TJ Hawkinson, rounds ahead of Noah Fant, and I was saying it doesn't make sense. Well, now you look at where Kyle Pitts is going in redraft leagues. He is a consistent 4th round pick. Now, if we understand what that means, that puts him in a range where the expectations are for him to be the best rookie tight end of all time. And now I'll say that those expectations are way too lofty. I mean, in a redraft format, I am not willing to spend a 4th round pick on Kyle Pitts. I don't care what the format is if you're just talking 2021 fantasy football. But it's not like every single person in the world playing redraft leagues, putting up their real money, is an idiot. It's not like everybody is looking at the wrong facts. I mean, there are reasons to get excited. There are reasons why people are deciding to reach on Kyle Pitts in the 4th round, even if I think he should be closer to a late 5th, early 6th round pick in those redraft formats. I mean, you have to look at the fact that he's already being assumed that he is worth that 4th. And this speaks volumes for what will happen with his dynasty value if he reaches these expectations. Because if we take a step back and we go, maybe we don't even agree that he is going to be able to return value on this type of investment. If he can come close to this, we already know, based on the hype that he has around his prospect profile, if Kyle Pitts hits anywhere close to being a top 5 tight end in fantasy his rookie season, which would presumably make him one of the best rookie tight ends of all time, we are going to be faced with an offseason next year where Kyle Pitts is going to be the consensus tight end 1 overall. I mean, that is shaping up to be the case if he does reach those 2021 expectations. So then you have to ask yourselves, okay, so even if this is a player that's most likely going to quote unquote disappoint redraft players this upcoming year, if he comes anywhere close to that mark, if he does see that jump in value, are we willing to make the investment now, even if you don't get that elite production, even if you don't get that Najee Harris production this upcoming season, so you can have that type of value next year? And I think the answer is yes. And the reason that we are saying that is because I think the likelihood of him hitting those expectations is now significantly higher with no Julio Jones. So you go through and you look at the Atlanta Falcons trying to evaluate what this offense is going to look like this upcoming season. And you'll see that last year they averaged 39 pass attempts a game. Now, I'll say, with no Julio Jones, with Arthur Smith coming in, I would be very surprised if they come close to 39 pass attempts a game. I think that that volume's kind of out the window. I think that's pretty much best case scenario for the players on the Atlanta Falcons offense. But we can't sit here and we can say, hey, maybe Arthur Smith can bring some of the efficiency that he had over there in Tennessee to this Atlanta offense. And if that's the case, I think you're going to actually outweigh the loss in volume if you see an efficiency bump, because Matt Ryan over the past few seasons has been one of the least efficient quarterbacks in the entire NFL. And more importantly, let's actually look at where the volume was going this past season in Atlanta. So Calvin Ridley was just a target hog on this team. I mean, Calvin Ridley averaging 9.5 targets a game last year. Next, you had Julio Jones at 7.5 targets a game. He only played 9 games, and here Julio Jones is gone. I mean, those are 7.5 targets a game that are now available. Now, you have Russell Gage as the 3rd player on this team in terms of the volume he was seeing. There, he was averaging close to 7 targets a game. And I know that we are all a part of the board saying Kyle Pitts is in a situation where he's most likely not going to reach his redraft expectations. But we can all agree that it doesn't matter how long we see these rookie tight ends take to develop. I mean, Kyle Pitts, the day he steps on that NFL field, is going to be a better player than Russell Gage. I mean, if you ask Arthur Smith who he would prefer getting a target to, if you ask Matt Ryan who he would prefer getting a target to, a polished slot wide receiver that really has a limited ceiling in the NFL, or a player that is a complete monster at 6'6", 245 pounds, who runs a 4.44 40-yard dash and has the catch radius of a pterodactyl. I mean, he's going to be going with Kyle Pitts. I mean, Kyle Pitts is a way better option than Russell Gage, so you can already expect some of that volume to go over to Kyle Pitts. And you throw in the fact that Hayden Hurst himself actually had 5.5 targets a game in this same offense. So we're going, okay, assuming Kyle Pitts can take some usage away from Russell Gage, assuming he's going to take the majority of usage away from a Hayden Hurst, this is someone that can easily see 6.5, 7.5 targets a game. And we go through and we look at some of the elite tight ends last year, trying to find how many targets that they had a game. And I mean, you pull up a George Kittle, and in 2020, George Kittle had 7.9 targets a game. So while no, you're not expecting Kyle Pitts to be nearly as efficient, given the fact that he isn't as developed, he isn't as polished, and we know the tight end position is by far and away the hardest position to develop at the NFL level. I mean, Kyle Pitts isn't going to be seeing close to the same amount of fantasy points, but you could find the volume to be just slightly worse for Kyle Pitts. And if that volume is there, if Kyle Pitts is seeing 7 targets a game with this prospect profile, all of a sudden, he's going to be the most productive rookie tight end of all time. So we sit here and we go, okay, well, yeah, we thought Kyle Pitts was overvalued at the beginning of the season. We have no Kyle Pitts across all of our dynasty leagues. But what does it cost to get him? I mean, are we even going to be able to trade for this player next offseason? And I think our assumption that we were going to be able to do that is wrong. And now I want to go back to something that I've really struggled with in Dynasty over the past few years. And I think the best example for everybody who's been a part of the flock for a very long time and has seen me whiff so hard on a few guys is back when we whiffed on Chris Godwin. Okay, so if y'all remember back in that 2019 season, please stick with me on this one. I promise you it's going to be a valid example. But anyway, if you remember back in 2019, leading up to that year, everybody was on the Chris Godwin train. I mean, it was Godwin #1 wide receiver breakout. Godwin #1 wide receiver breakout. I mean, if you put on any fantasy sports podcast on the planet, everybody was all aboard Chris Godwin. He saw his redraft ADP move from like the 7th round all the way up until by the time we got to the start of the season, he was a 4th round draft pick. So you saw that hype build from essentially nothing. You saw that hype build just from the fantasy football community. And it turns out that they were right. We were wrong. We did not have Chris Godwin on a single team. I went through and I was adamant. I was saying, hey, if we drafted 100 fantasy leagues just this weekend, I would not come away with Chris Godwin on a single one of those. And what happened? Chris Godwin came out and exploded. Chris Godwin came out and was a top 5 wide receiver in fantasy. And why I'm bringing this up is not to say that we can be wrong, because we know we are wrong all the time. I'm throwing in the towel before the season's even started here. But what I want to bring up is the fact that when a player already has that much hype and then he comes through and actually hits with real game production, what you find is you do not find his actual dynasty trade value moving proportionately. What you find is you find everybody who has said Chris Godwin is my guy, while in reality, everybody liked him. Then they all want to be overly aggressive on him, where his dynasty price then exponentially goes up to the point where that player is no longer obtainable. So I was looking at this as a situation previously before these targets were available in the Atlanta Falcons offense. And I was saying, hey, Kyle Pitts, a guy that has so much talent, eventually he is going to be that top tight end in the NFL, but I would prefer to wait a season, then go through, trade for him going into next year, given the fact that the volume most likely won't be there his rookie season, as it's not there for any of these rookie tight ends, and that is how we can acquire him on our dynasty teams. And I know that we've had a lot of people listen to us with that advice, and now, if you did listen, I apologize, because it's going to be nearly impossible to get Kyle Pitts on your dynasty team. I mean, he went as the tight end 1 overall in our most recent dynasty startup mock draft. Now, I don't think we can agree to that. I mean, I think that is a little bit aggressive to already have him there. But when we were laughing, and I was clowning on people for taking him over a Darren Waller in startups at the beginning of this offseason. I was saying that was the worst pick in dynasty leagues. I was saying that was something that you were going to be looking back on and really shaking your head at. Well, it looks like those people were not bad. It looks like I was bad for saying so. That's why we're out here trying to make this video, trying to come to a realistic expectation on where you should have Kyle Pitts in Dynasty and what you should be expecting his rookie season, because his rookie season is going to dictate what his Dynasty value is next offseason. I hate people saying, Mason, we're drafting these players for 3 years from now. No, you need to understand what their value is going to be 12 months from now. I mean, if you really love Jalen Reagor, but you didn't like him until year 2, there's no reason for you to go draft him in your rookie draft when you can trade for him 12 months later at a massive discount. So you have to understand how that value is going to change here. And if we go back to what you may be expecting in 2021 for Kyle Pitts, I mean, here we already said you could easily see 7 to 8 targets for Kyle Pitts. Majority of the time, I think you're actually going to find 6 to 7 targets. But if you're talking the 90th percentile outcome, I think he can push over 7 targets a game this upcoming season. And you look at what Arthur Smith did at Tennessee. Now, I know a lot of people want to focus in on the fact that he is a former tight ends coach. He was the tight ends coach for Tennessee from 2013 to 2018. But more importantly, he was the offensive coordinator in 2019 and 2020. I mean, that's going to be a lot more important. I really think that him being a tight ends coach doesn't mean too much. But what does mean a lot is the volume that we saw the Tennessee Titans offense going with for the tight end position this past year. So Tennessee had 30 pass attempts a game this past year, which is significantly less than what you saw with Atlanta. But like we said, Tennessee had an efficiency mark that was so much higher than Atlanta that if you kind of come halfway between on both sides, I mean, you're going to be expecting, I don't want to say similar production, but at least better than what Atlanta has given you over the past few years. And out of those 30 pass attempts a game, 7.5% of those targets were actually going to the tight end position. Now, if we do some quick math, that's 25% of the team's targets going over to the tight end position. And this is between the combination of Jonnu Smith and Anthony Firkser. So you're looking at giving Arthur Smith, someone who already wanted to get his team 25% of the team targets going to the tight end position, with tight ends that aren't necessarily at the very top of the league in terms of their talent or their athleticism. Now you give this guy a Kyle Pitts, and everything changes. I mean, if he hits 25% of his team's targets, which I know Kyle Pitts isn't going to do, but even if he hits 20% of his team's targets, this is a player that is going to be the best rookie tight end of all time. Now, you go over to ESPN projections for what they had with Kyle Pitts before and after the Julio Jones trade. And I think that it's a little bit laughable. And before the Julio Jones trade, they had him for 93 targets on the season, 65 receptions, and 760 yards. Which we said was way, way too aggressive. I mean, there was no way that Kyle Pitts was going to be hitting 93 targets, 65 receptions, and 760 yards with Julio Jones in town. Well, now, without Julio, they have bumped him up to 103 targets, 70 receptions, and 809 receiving yards, a mark that I think is now actually obtainable. And the thing is, if he hits this mark, with him being 21 next offseason, with everybody in Dynasty already aboard the Kyle Pitts hype train, there is nothing holding him back from being a top 12 startup pick. So that's why I'm saying that we're throwing in the towel on Kyle Pitts. I still want Kittle over him. I still want Kelsey over him. Most likely, I still want Waller over him, but he's right there. And if you wanted to take Kyle Pitts ahead of Waller, ahead of Kittle, I'm not going to sit here and argue with you. I'm not going to call you stupid like I did at the beginning of the offseason, because we were being short-sighted. We weren't necessarily giving the actual respect to the Dynasty community and the hype train that they build. When one of those players hits, their value goes exponential. It does not raise proportionately. Buying into a hype player, while sometimes maybe the player you're buying into, the price doesn't make sense. I mean, if they work out, then you're seeing a massive return on investment. So thank you, my dudes. I hope y'all enjoyed this video. I did not enjoy making it at all. I don't own him in a single Dynasty format, but it looks like it was a mistake, and we're going to throw in that towel before the season even starts. So congrats to everybody drafting Kyle Pitts earlier this offseason at a discount, because his price has increased. Now I'm not going to be able to get him in a single league. I'm not going to be willing to pay that price, and we're going to be sitting on the sidelines rooting against him, of course, because I'm trying to make money this upcoming season. I'm trying to get as much value on my Dynasty team as possible. But yeah, it looks like the bet we made at the beginning of the offseason was wrong. I apologize for that. And of course, we are going to come out, address it, and not hide behind the fact. And yeah, thank you guys. Drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. I'll see y'all with the video tomorrow. I want to thank everybody who has recently decided to join the flock in Alex, Jack, Bud, Kevin, Connor, Caesar, Jonathan, Joseph, Jordan, and James. Thank you, my dudes.